This video and even channel is brought to you by my beautiful Patreon teams. If you want to join the Patreon team, please feel free to click the link down below. And if not, that's totally fine. I hope you enjoy. Kurosawa is seen as one of the most important masters of film. His work has been referenced, revised, and even tried to be replicated throughout the last 60 years. His movies ranging from The Seven Samurai to Throne of Blood to Yojimbo and of course High and Low, all have influenced directors to this date, and his influence can be seen throughout not just film, but television and of course gaming. From the fantastic blocking techniques used in each scene of his movies to the use of silhouettes of battle and even loss. But possibly the most iconic thing about Kurosawa's work is of course the flow of movement, and the way that he brilliantly controls the movement of the world and even controls emotions by using the elements in frame. I'm excited to welcome you to today's video while we explore the movement and control of movement in the Ghost of Tsushima. Elements and weather possibly play a bigger role than any character in Kurosawa's films. He uses the wind to show change in the tide of battle, rain can show us an upsetting and even emotional atmosphere, and of course fire can create the sense of fear and even power, both taken and loss. The elements are a constant and beautiful reminder that life moves on within these worlds no matter what is actually happening within characters, but at the same time it entwines within their stories and entwines with their emotions or whatever's happening on scene. There are so many fantastic moments in his work where actors and frames are almost frozen in a moment. He can have a scene surrounded by silence and even motionless people, but the world continues moving with natural and even exaggerated extents. Tumbleweed blind across a standoff between two outlaws, with the slightest movement of a single person which could spell death within the next few minutes. With a character crying in what seems a non-ending pouring rain, showing that their problems really don't match the problems of the world and the world is not going to stop for them for a single second. Or even something like Batman watching over someone he loves immediately be taken away, with the remains of flames still blazing behind him, which is still fighting off against the water of the firefighters which is trying to take it out. There is a narrative and storytelling device that comes with each element within the scene. These are all clear and even brilliant examples of his influence in cinema because of his use of motion and even weather effects throughout his years of filmmaking.
You're a good horse, Kage.
Ghost of Tsushima has easily become one of the most visually pleasing and even most beautiful games ever created. There is an aura of life with every step that you take within this world, and I strongly believe it's because of its use of motion within every single frame. As you explore the beautiful worlds that Sucker Punch has created, the player are guided by the winds. There is not a moment in Ghost of Tsushima where the player isn't being accompanied by the wind. The winds, just like in a Kurosawa film, remain to be an element and a force that literally pushes the player and or viewer forward to the next scene. And this is definitely the main element that brings Kurosawa's work to life and really makes it shine within the world of Ghost of Tsushima. Taking a step back from the traditions of gaming, removing the classic waypoint or even minimap system with falling leaves and even pollen sprouting from flowers full of colour and even life, tells us as the player and even in the arc of the story that no matter what happens here, no matter what happens within this story, the world doesn't stop moving on and there's always a sense of purpose with each blow of the wind. As the leaves, pollen in the air, butterflies and even fireflies all turn into embers, we know there's also a rage and even sense of hatred within this world. Swords are powerful. They're a powerful tool to give to someone. In movie, we have seen them being used in some of the most iconic and even meaningful fights. There's an expectation that comes from pulling a sword out of its sheath. It's powerful. It itself can be the sound of power. We most commonly link this to the sounds of beginning an adventure or even courage to fight something dangerous. But in a lot of Japanese cinema, especially that inspired Tsushima, we as the player don't need that sound as a courage reminder or even to show the strength or even the purpose of our next battle. It's an impossible sound that doesn't need to be there because there's already tension created by its atmosphere. It's the winds of Harakiri that show us the importance of that duel. It's the in-timed walk of bandits while they're in sync with beats and even walking towards the wind while our hero walks against the wind, implicating that he really is going against all odds if the winds and the elements are not even on his side. In each one of these battles we can see and even hear something important. There is no impossible sound of a sword being unsheathed. There truly is no need for grand entrances or even Hollywood sword sounds, because the world and the music is enough to remind you that all these men and even people have courage and strength to fight. Sucker Punch proved that we don't have to have a silly swoosh sound every time we want to enter battle, because we know what comes next, we understand what we must do as Jin, and we know the amount of courage and even loss that he's gone through, so we don't have to be reminded that he is the hero of this story, because we're there seeing it and we're there seeing the actions that he must take. There is something that almost feels choreographed with each scene of nature and even duel and even combat in the Ghost of Tsushima. Most fights can look like a mess of swords flying around until you truly find your footing within this game, but then things start to drop to the floor with a synchronized and even over-top Hollywood bravado style. Enemy grabs for the air and even clutch away at their last breath with nothing more than just the intent to give the player a few precious seconds to calmly clean their sword against their elbow and put their sword away just as they hit the ground. And these few seconds are really important to the expectations of Japanese and even samurai cinema. Kurosawa uses ridiculous amounts of blood and even sudden strikes to create shock within an intense scene, and these can happen within seconds, and before you know it you're already looking at blood splattering everywhere. And Ghost of Tsushima seemed to follow in suit. To see blood just spurting out of your enemies as they fall to the ground while you're cleaning your sword is so satisfying, and it just reminds you how cool and even how powerful Jin really is as a samurai. But something that spoke to me most out of the Ghost of Tsushima, that the photo mode itself plays a very huge part in the identity of the game. You're allowed to freeze frame any moment within the gameplay. You're able to play with the colour grading to the shift of the winds, allowing players to create and even go beyond what photo mode has done before in the past. But this isn't just about creating something cool and then sharing it with friends and even making yourself feel good. I actually spoke about this feeling in my Importance of Photo Mode video, which there's a link down below if you want to check that out. But as a young person growing up and even wanting to take interest in film and even editing and of course photography, being able to create something within game gave me a lot of experiences and even gave me something to learn off, even though I wasn't able to afford my own camera equipment. To actually have the ability to be able to freeze frame a game and learn what works and what doesn't work with communities is something that's important and even inspiring to people who are hoping to get into the industry. Kurosawa inspired so many fantastic directors from George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese and even Quentin Tarantino, are just to name a few. They didn't have the ability to play the games that we do as beautiful as we do and replicate Kurosawa's work on the fly. But there is an excitement and even something very personal about being able to experience and even experiment with such integral and even important moments in gaming. Having the player being able to pose Jin against beautiful landscapes or even destroyed towns and creating shots that allow us to connect with the beautiful side of this medium. You're not just taking a quick freeze frame image, but instead the world itself continues in motion with the use of particle effects and even winds. Only hammering the importance of the effects of elements and even winds within its worlds. When you have to create your own artworks and even moments of time frozen and having the full beautiful abilities of being able to control each winds and each particle effects, you begin to see what it was like for Kurosawa's mind to work and even create a scene. But this photo mode alone is only scratching the surface of Kurosawa's brilliance and importance to the world of film and even directing. So thank you Sucker Punch for bringing his work to the mainstream audience who may not even know of Akira Kurosawa. Thank you so much for implementing some of his elements and use of directing within your game. And of course, thank you Akira Kurosawa for all the years and even the films that you've brought to us and all the great directors who've taken inspiration from you. Hello everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was nice to sort of take a little dive back into the world of film, and that's something I've been thinking about recently. Would people like to see me actually take a little more dive into the film industry? I did study media and film studies in college, so maybe that's something that people might want to hear my thoughts on and exactly what I think about movies. If you enjoyed this video, of course, please leave a like and feel free to subscribe. And of course, as I said earlier, if you want to join the Patreon team, there's a link down below. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and of course, I will see you at the next checkpoints. Goodbye.